I'm Miwa Messer. I'm the producer and host of Poured Over, and Patti Smith, the Patti Smith, winner of the National Book Award for Nonfiction for Just Kids, has a new book out, and it's called A Book of Days, and it is 366 ways to say hello. And we
Thank
get
you.
to say hello to Patti Smith today. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm
So
happy
excited.
I'm happy to be here. I'm as a person who loves bookstores and has been
Mm-hmm.
into Barnes and Noble many times. I've done signings there and readings
Mm-hmm.
there, and it's nice to have continuing support.
It's really great to see you. This book is a little different from your earlier books, though. Each page is an image with a little bit of text. And you say in the opening of the book that really this was sort of a pandemic project in some ways, but anyone who's read Just Kids or M Train or You're the Monkey or Wool Gathering will see that there's a very distinct Patti Smith image and
Thank you.
then
Oh,
some beautiful prose to go with it.
I'm hoping. I thought it was actually a more complicated book than I thought. It was inspired by, I was in such isolation during the pandemic, and my daughter, she pressed me to start an Instagram because I don't really have social media. And I actually liked it. I liked, at least my take on it. I liked, because I take a lot of pictures and I like sharing books and thoughts and images with people. And people comment. So I felt, even though I was isolated and had to cancel a whole world tour, that I was still in connection with the people. Yeah, so it did inspire me to do this book. The book is its own. It's not just lifted from Instagram. The Instagram inspired it, but it's its own animal. And I tried, even though there's certain images or certain thoughts that might overlap, quite a bit of it is new images and new thoughts, one for every day.
It's so beautiful, this book. I'm so excited
Thank you.
for the world to have it. It's such a treat to dip in and out of. And I have to tell you, you sent me down some rabbit holes with this book.
The idea.
I was playing with some of the some of your earlier books because just to have, the context, right? But I started listening to Rossini's Thieving Magpie because you sent me to Murakami, which sent me to the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. And it has that opening line where you should be listening to this as you boil pasta. And I thought, oh, right, I should be listening to this. And then when you were talking about Robert Bolaño, listening to Glenn Gould's Goldberg Variations as he on loop while he was writing 2666, you sent me back to Glenn Gould.
You're
and the
my kind of
Goldberg
person.
Variation. And then Sam Shepard, you sent
Yeah.
me back to True West and also the last two books, The One Inside and Spy the First Person. And it was such a joy to be able to go back to these things that, yes, I had experienced in different ways previously, but to be able to slide down that rabbit hole because you reminded me with a very singular image, and maybe not the most prose I've ever seen from you on a page, but the whole thing is delightful. So here's a question for you, though. How does a photograph start for you?
Well, for the book, this was slightly complicated because I had many agendas. One was, certain birthdays that I wanted to acknowledge, books that I wanted people to see, um, a family or friends, and so I would have to pick one singular image that represented that particular book or that particular poet. But then I also had to think about, an Instagram has one singular image, singular, that's redundant, but anyway, a singular image. The book, you have a side by side images. So I also had to think about, how does the picture on the left inform or harmonize with the picture on the right, both aesthetically and subject wise. So the books became much more complex than I had imagined, because I had a lot of aesthetic choices as well as, subject choices. And really, I just try to, most of the images I shot myself, except of course ones that I couldn't shoot because referencing someone I don't know. I never shot Joan Didion or Greta Thunberg, but I wanted them in the book. And and a few, when there's pictures of me, most of them are by my friends. So I wanted each picture to be aesthetically pleasing and worthy of a page. Some pictures I really liked didn't get in the book only because I couldn't find the right parallel picture, or it got sort of knocked out by something else. It was Samuel Beckett's birthday, so the image that I had there, I changed it. But it was really like a great puzzle. It was fun, but it was also much more labor intensive than I imagined.
Were you laying it out on paper or were you laying it out on a computer screen? Because you've said you write captions in both a notebook or on maybe directly on the phone, depending. But when you're doing, I mean, this is
It was
366
well,
images.
I was making long strips of paper and just
Uh,
drawing boxes and putting them next to each other, and then I had to work from computer and on paper. I didn't really have the technology to print all kinds of things out or anything. So, but I got to know them so well. I got to know each picture so well, and the combinations. And but I did a lot of it like as if I was writing a storyboard. And because then, truthfully, I get so obsessive that then I got concerned not only how the right and left picture was, but what were the pictures before that? Even though there is not a whole lot of text, I promise you, everything in the book was given a lot of thought.
it flows really beautifully, but can we talk about the rhythm of the images and the rhythm of sort of, because you break it out by month and then by day within the month, but there's a very distinct reading experience that comes with this book. And I'd love to sort of,
Really?
yeah, I think so. I feel like there are moments of great joy and glee and wonder and discovery. And then there are moments where you're a little quieter and maybe
Mhm.
there's some grief. Each piece sets off another. And it's, as you were saying, you were thinking about the layout, page facing and opposite pages and all of that. But at the same time, I think there's more to this story than just
Well, there was also the idea that I wanted in some images and some of the writing to impart information.
Mhm.
If, for instance, there was a mathematician or a young scientist or Beverly Pepper, a great
Mhm.
sculptress who actually a lot of people don't know about, I imparted a little more information.
Mhm.
Can only put so much information, but enough information, hopefully, that would represent the artist, but also seduce people to look these people up or study them or see their work. Sometimes I just felt like, Joan Didion, I knew her. Um,
Mhm.
there's so much one could say about her, but instead I approached her the way she approached. She gave me, for instance, a quote for Just Kids, which was a
Mhm.
great honor. It was a very simple quote, but it had such a special quality. So I wanted to do it in kind. So for Joan, it just says a pure writer, because
Mhm.
I felt those few words said everything I needed to say. I could have been a little more, you know, wrote, dark glasses and a stingray or something like that. But I just, I wanted to, show great respect and with a few words. For my husband, I could write, there's a million things I could say about him, but I kept it very simple. And I showed, very precious, a picture of him and his guitar pick and his capo, things no one's ever seen. So instead of giving people a lot of information about Fred, I gave them something that was very personal. So, yeah, I really thought about these. I didn't want the descriptions or the captions or whatever one would want to call them really lengthy. I didn't want them to seem like it was a textbook. I wanted, to give people, you know, express things in a different way. The pictures are different. Some are color, some are black and white, some are extremely dark Polaroids, some, are, a bit deteriorated. But, and I wanted also the words to be sometimes very direct, even a little formal, and other times playful. I think, for instance, little Lulu is in the in
It
the
is.
book, and there's a few different entries where, there's a certain amount of levity. But even in levity, I it's something that means something to me. I think there's another one of me discussing a lemon with my cat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's not much to be learned by that, but lemons are medicinal, one of nature's gifts to us. And my cat is, so beloved. So I wanted to show a little bit of our intimacy. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I intentionally didn't write a lot because I want people to feel the experience instead of reading about it. I they I want them just to have a little feeling about Fred or a feeling about my mother. I've written about both of them quite a bit and plan to write about both of them quite a bit more. But this book isn't necessarily about, just learning things or being led to things. It's giving people a little moment. I show my father's coffee cup. Maybe it'll make one think of their own father's coffee cup. And that's why I think I mentioned in the introduction that these pictures are also, they're springboards for
Mm-hmm.
your own mental pictures. If it's Sylvia Plath's birthday, it's also 1,000,000,000 birthdays. It might be your birthday. So each one is resonates all the birthdays.
The images are really dreamy, though. Some of them are a little haunted, but they're all dreamy in that very Patti Smith way, as I think of it, having read your earlier books. And I do love your aesthetic.
I'm happy with the whole book because it's so beautifully designed and I love the trim size, everything about it. I'm very attentive to book production. The pictures, I chose not, if it was on a more coated or shiny paper, maybe the pictures would have been a little more high res or something, but I wanted it to be a little more of a literary experience where people really feel like they're looking at the pages of a book and not an art book or a cookbook or so they do take on that dreamy cast that certain critics have called blurry or whatever, but I don't care. I don't hurl myself as a photographer. I know a lot about photography. I've been taking pictures most of my life and I have a certain aesthetic, and that's, you know I take the pictures that I want to take. I leave all the other pictures to other people.
There's so many people who think of you as Patti Smith musician first, and I think of you as a writer first. And I know you started as a poet and picked up music later, but again, when you talk about books, you're a book person.
Oh, I've never called myself a musician. When I
Mhm.
write I
Mhm.
have to hand in bios. I never actually, I'll say that I'm a writer, performer, singer or whatever, but it's always a writer and performer. I don't consider myself a musician. That's not out of modesty. It's just I did not spend a lifetime studying and being engulfed and driven by music. I'm really driven by poetry. I'm really driven by language, but also I'm driven by a desire to connect with the people. Um, so I could have been a teacher. I could have been a politician. I could have been anyone that communicates with people verbally because I like that. But I wound up a performer. But it was all rooted in poetry. And as a book person, I have loved books since I was a toddler. And I have books. I mean, I'm sitting at a table and I'm looking, just happenstance. There's 5 books on this table. They're just laying there. No, and I'm always have a book nearby. I can't go into the bathroom without a book. I have to, unless it's a real emergency. But I love books. I worked in bookstores for 7 years, and I love book design, everything about books. When I worked on Wool Gathering with New Direction, we discussed, the color of the thread, to bind the book. And I love all of that. I don't have to be the person that chooses it all the time, but I like to be involved and to see, what everyone is doing and what their vision is. I love books.
It is a nice way to connect. And that's the thing that I appreciate when I'm reading, whether I'm reading fiction or poetry or narrative nonfiction, to be able to walk into someone else's head and someone else's world, regardless of what it may or may not be. And then I get to sit down and talk to people. It's even better.
Mhm.
But who are you as a reader? I mean, I know your taste is so wide. I mean, we go from Burroughs and Ginsberg and Sylvia Plath to Baudelaire and Rimbaud and Marguerite Duras, but who have you been reading lately?
Well, actually, it's so funny because look what's on my table.
Mm.
It's by, I don't know if you can see
Oh, that yeah,
Ariel.
I can absolutely see. That is a beautiful copy of Ariel.
Oh, it's
That is
really old. I've had
amazing.
this for
Yeah.
years. And since the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I mean, I'm in Rockaway right now. So, the books that are on my table is
Mm-hmm.
Journey to the East,
Yeah.
which I've read many times. Bruno Schultz, Sanatorium Under the Sign of the Hourglass. Awesome
Yeah.
book. And then there's a couple of books over there. But at home, I've actually been, I read mostly fiction. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, except when I'm studying or reading a biography. I'm just not a nonfiction person all around. I don't really watch many documentaries, or I'm all into imagination. And I've been like that my whole life. I read mostly, since a child, poetry and fairy tales and,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
detective books, but right now I was studying, well, I'm in the middle of my own rabbit hole. So I can tell you that in the rabbit hole, the components right now are Nabokov's Gogol, The
Okay.
Divided Soul, which is a big biography of Gogol, a book on this Russian painter called Alexander Ivanov. And so I have this stack of strangely interrelated books just to write one like prose poem. So that's been an adventure. If I can't find a new good book to read, I have to have something, either some obsession. And I love being as you were calling it, rabbit hole. I loved it. I loved Alice in Wonderland when I was a kid. I
Mm-hmm.
have a permanent ticket down the rabbit hole. And I just well, I love Nabokov's Gogol, which made me want to read a big biography of Gogol. And I read that. And in reading about him in Rome, I learned about this completely obsessive poet, Alexander Ivanov, who spent 20 years on one painting. Well, I had to find out about that. So I I was totally sidetracked. And then in studying that, I saw that they were all hanging out in this cafe that I had been to in near the Spanish Steps in Rome, called the Cafe Greco, which is one of the oldest cafes in the world that's
Mm-hmm.
going. Then I had to start studying about the history of Cafe Greco. Anyway, sorry, that's more than you needed to know, but at least you can see where my reading habits come from.
But I think your reading habits also really inform the Book of Days, because
Yeah,
the way
it's the same
things
type of thing. Yeah.
pop up, but that's the joy of it for me. I mean, when I realized all of these different directions that your one book sent me in, and it's happened before with your other books, please don't misunderstand me. I mean, there have been times where I'm like, oh, I should listen to this, or I should go see this, or I should read this. But to have it happen so quickly in something so new and slightly different, I mean, it does reference earlier work to a certain extent, and certainly your aesthetic is, I mean, I know it when I see it, right?
That's awesome.
I
That's
know
what
it when
I'm
I see it.
for, especially in a book like this.
Mhm.
But I mean, you're exactly right. But I was hopping around like a wacky bunny in this. I mean, because also I would find these things myself that weren't even I didn't even do on purpose, where I would see that, one date in April was really leaping over to another date, in September. So yeah, I'm so happy because that's the book really, I'm hoping that it will be, entertaining and a little heartening and just something, sometimes we want something that can can be as complex as we want it to be, but also just as simple as we'd like it to be. You could really just look at it, and I'd like to imagine it by people's bed, on their bedstand, and then they look at a couple pictures and then they go off into some, dreamy sleep.
The sense of wonder is really important. The connection that you obviously have, not just to the natural world. I mean, there's some lovely landscape photos that pop up, and certainly Greta Thunberg as well. I mean, we all appreciate what she's doing. But how do you sit down and figure out who the people are going to be? I mean, I know you wanted to mark some birthdays. There are some death dates as well that you mark. There are people, obviously, from your family. But how do you even start to edit something like this?
Well, I tried to not overthink it.
Okay.
Not, for instance, some of my friends are in the book, some of them aren't in the book. It's just like there was no reason except for maybe one friend. I thought that it would be maybe a certain other friend is used to having their pictures many places. Another friend isn't. I thought that another friend might, like, you know, like that I was thinking of them. And some of my favorite writers aren't in the book. A lot of it, again, because the pictures, because also of clearances and costs and things, I had to choose pictures that were my own. And because of the pandemic, I really wasn't out on the prowl. So I had to use pictures that were mine that I had taken and or just take them in my room. I mean, you can almost see all the pictures I've taken in my room. It's the same bookcase. I took the picture of Fred and the picture of Tolstoy or, but I thought that was okay because it's a friendly thread throughout. You can see it's my bookcase and I'm setting up these little tableaus. And so I'm not saying that I was confined to certain things, but I did have, my, well, I had the resources that I had and also taking my own pictures, using my own pictures, I wouldn't have to go through all kinds of difficulties and sometimes heartbreak trying to get a clearance for a photograph. I thought about this a lot and thought when I look at it, I think in a certain way, there's some odd choices in there. Why is this Iranian, this mathematician from Iran in there, Morzakani? But this beautiful woman, I love mathematics. I love John Nash and I read Men of Mathematics. I'm terrible in mathematics, but I love them. And in studying mathematics, I know about the Field Prize. She was the first woman, history of the Field Prize to win this prize. I just thought that was so great, and she has such a great manner. And she died, of cancer. I was heartbroken when she died. I didn't know her or anything. And so I knew very early on that I wanted her to be in the book. And I wanted something worthy next to her. And I didn't know what would be next to her. And then my daughter Jessie was on a march for International Women's Day. And I thought, there, that's perfect. Um, I just, I didn't overthink it. I just looked at these two idealistic faces and I thought they're good together.
And honestly, I had never heard of the Field Prize. I had never heard of your mathematician. And that part of the delight for me flipping through and being able to sit was also trying to sort of figure out where you were coming from. Because, I mean, Rimbaud, I expect Rimbaud. I don't know how he's going to pop up in your work, but he will pop up.
Yeah,
There are
and
certain
he's in there a
things.
lot, but
Yeah.
I also, it just happened that he was in there a lot. And also, I also know it's like a little gift to young people who really love him. And because he's been a part of my lifelong experience.
But also, why not?
Yeah,
I
why
mean,
not? There are good, there are pictures that are fun and
yeah.
there's a lot of different correlations. But I do love mathematics. I would have loved to have had John Nash in my book because I love him. I follow mathematicians and I've met a lot of them when I did the Nobel
Mhm.
performance to honor
Yeah.
Bob Dylan. I met a lot of great mathematicians, Nobel mathematicians. I was thrilled. It's like, for me, they're like movie stars. So she represents in this one face, this one beautiful face, my whole love of mathematics.
It's not my thing, but it is beautiful. And you need math to do a lot of things like build buildings and fly planes and, you
I
know,
think I just aesthetically always thought it was beautiful. I was really good at math as a kid, and then we got to geometry, and I could get answers quickly, but I couldn't work on the proofs. I can't play chess. I have certain reasons. I have a slight little neurological niche, the glitch that keeps me from driving. I have a right-left reversal thing, and so I failed mathematics for the rest of my life, but I mean, student life, but I always loved it. I loved the books. I loved the equations. I loved what they look like. I love the stories. If you read this book, E.T. Bell wrote a story called Men in Mathematics. As some people say is somewhat romanticized, fine with me. These mathematics throughout time lived the life of like the most downtrodden poets. And, because they had this secret language like poets. And to me, they're like another kind of poet.
there's also a lot of poetry, though, in photography. And I'm not referring just to the images that you capture, but also developing film or waiting for a Polaroid. Remember waiting for a Polaroid
Oh,
to
yeah.
emerge? I mean, that was always so much fun.
Well, I mean, for me, the challenge in taking pictures, I wanted my photographs because I would make negatives of my Polaroids. I always took very flat pictures. Um, and or try to or take pictures in a more silvery light because I really like 19th century pictures, 19th century anonymous pictures. A lot of like the unknown people or amateurs took such beautiful pictures. And I love when you get old, really old travel books and there's these grainy pictures of, Samara or someplace or these, the pyramids, but in, 1920 and they're always grainy and beautiful. And that's the kind of pictures that I sought to take and really just for myself. I mean, I don't aspire to do anything new in photography. I never did. Uh, I mean, really, probably in my life, the only time I was trying to do something new is in rock and roll. I don't really try to do anything new in any other genre. I just want it to be good or if not good, hopefully great or enduring. But rock and roll was I had a whole other motivation. I wanted to, kick down walls. But in writing or taking pictures, it's more aesthetic. My photographs are really, it's funny, I should do a whole book filled with them because I really take photographs for myself. I write for the people, but pictures, I have that one respite when I'm taking them. I don't really care whether people are drawn to them or not. But I'm hoping that in this, I tried to pick ones that I thought, were appealing and that, like you had said, that the book it's more important that the book had sort of a vibe or an atmosphere. And that's what I was also gunning for, was that the book had a certain atmosphere.
Oh, it does. It definitely does.
gunning gunning for atmosphere kind of.
That's very Patti Smith.
Yeah.
Do you miss shooting on film though? Because I mean, learning to shoot on a camera on a phone is a very different balance. It's the light hits differently. Sometimes the colors show up differently. What's that like for you now? I mean, it's very hard to get film. It is, I mean, it can be
Well,
done, but
Polaroid film is finished. I mean,
right.
there was some Fuji film and other
Mm.
film that for a while was pretty good, but they don't have the atmosphere or something. It's like the difference between a Leica, and a I don't know, a Nikon, two good cameras, but the Leica has a grain and a certain look. I had a good run. I know that the film is, I'm sure, bad for the environment. So I feel like I had my run. I mourned, when the film, you couldn't get the film anymore. I did mourn taking my pictures because I love going about with my camera. But now I take my cell phone, and you can take very nice pictures with a cell phone, and if you get the right light, and you know, a lot of the pictures in the book, of course, every color picture was taken with my cell phone. At first it seemed appalling to me, and then I thought, well, in a way, the cell phone is, as I had written, the great equalizer. Everybody takes pictures with a cell phone, and in doing that, some people, I believe, because I've watched people all over the world taking pictures with their cell phone in different places. Some people just they shoot everything, and other people they're starting to see, oh, if I move the camera, they never took pictures before. They never had a camera, but now they have this cell phone, and they're thinking, if I move it over this way, and if I put it in that light, oh, that looks nicer. And maybe they don't have the language or know why, but they are learning and they're making choices. They're finding some aspect of their creative impulse. So I think that that's very nice. Only artists are artists. People that are called have a certain place. We can all write poetry. Every teenage girl can write a poem, tearing down or building up her boyfriend, but only poets are poets, as in the highest sense. I think it's important that everyone get to exercise their creative impulse, but having a lifelong calling for any vocation is it really requires so much discipline, sacrifice, hard work, and a certain blessing.
I'm not classically trained as a poet. I just like to read poetry. And sometimes it really zings, and sometimes I think, oh, I don't possibly quite understand the whole thing. But the whole idea, as I understand it, is to capture the image and to capture the feeling and capture the emotion. And that's exactly what you're doing in A Book of Days. And I think it's kind of sublime and very pretty and very surprising. Did anything really surprise you, though, when you were putting it together? I know we've talked about the whole process, and yes, it was, a little harder and more complicated than you thought, but I can't help but think there was some unexpected joy that came out of it too, simply because.
Biggest joy was that I finished it.
Oh, okay.
I had I worried for a while because it got a slow start, because
Mhm.
I was sort of making it up as I went along. I knew what At first I thought it would be very simple, that it would be more of a Instagram book, and I
Mhm.
would use a lot of the images and a lot of things. And I thought, I can't do that. It's got to be something new.
Right.
And the technical thing of having all of my photographs, and on the computer or something, and having to keep looking at them, and not really being able to look at, have the technology, or to be able to do printouts or something. So there was it was slow going, and it finally caught its groove, and I was able to finish it. And then in looking at it, when they made a galley or something, and I looked at it and I thought it had a nice rhythm. I mean, I'm very conscious of rhythm in my books, but, and I was trying, but I thought, how can I successfully, if I'm working on the rhythm of, you know, April, what's going to happen in December? The other thing that I liked is surprises, like how one month, for no particular reason, I think like December, there's a lot of women in it. It just happened that way. It's also the month I was born, but it just happened that way. Or another would have um, almost all black and white pictures, or just, I mean, there would be like clusters of things that I didn't even notice. Or there's a section that's very musical, that has like Elvis Presley and Coltrane and Hank Williams and my husband, and it just happened. I didn't plan it. And I loved these unexpected sort of is the word symbiotic, but these clusters of things where things really seem to move together. So I was, and I think the book, it starts out, it's almost like it's treading on tiptoe in the beginning because I didn't know where it was going. I did it chronologically. I started with January and I didn't exactly know what I was going to be doing. And then, I like I said, I got in a groove, but so probably others will see it more or in a different way, but maybe they'll see how it evolved in a certain way. I figure new generations are redesigning and translating our culture right as we speak. And so it's really like a little window into the cultural voice that I came up with.
I'd also argue it's 366 verses of an epic poem.
No,
I would, that's what I would say.
I've never seen it all together. That would be funny.
I think you're going to really enjoy. I think this is, even as you're turning pages, though, the physical act of turning a page is changing the narrative, and so you have to actually. I read electronically. I listen to audio. I engage with books in as many different ways as I can engage with books, but there is so much joy for me touching paper, and when I'm prepping for shows, in fact, I really prefer working off of paper. Which I think makes me a little old-fashioned because I've heard some folks say, "Well, I only read digital." There's plenty of things I like to read digitally. Don't miss it. But I need to write on books and I need to make notes. And I have colleagues in the office who I'll warn them. I'm like, "Sure, you can borrow that, but you need to understand I have written all over it, and it can be very distracting because I had thoughts."
William Blake wrote all over his books, and when I was with Allen Ginsberg when he died. I was there for the last couple of days, and we were a few of us were standing vigil, and I was looking at his books, and he had a whole bookcase of books about William Blake, and you could take anyone off the shelf, and you could hardly even read Blake. He had written in every single margin, every single place where there was white, notations on each thing he was reading. It was like mind expansion, but you could hardly read it. And I do the same thing. I remember getting a book. Sam Shepard lent me a book. He was a real underliner.
I can see that.
And he would underline in pencil so many things. And especially, I had a book of Samuel Beckett's. It's the book in the, he gave it to me. I opened it up and it was almost like a letter from Sam because there was all these things underlined. So I really paid attention to those.
What's next for you in terms of books? Have you thought about what the next project might be?
Oh, well, I'm always working on a couple of books at the same time. So I have one book that is basically, it's a memoir, but it has a lot, childhood really figures much deeper in this book than it's different than Just Kids. Just Kids was really, and it's going to take me a while. Just Kids took me over a decade, but that was the first book that I had to write that was nonfiction, but also for that had a particular mission. And I would have never written that book had Robert not asked me to do it, because I just wrote poetry and fiction. So it took me a long time. And I don't want to write another book like that, but I do want to write from a different voice about childhood and about art and various things. So I'm working on that. But I'm also I have a detective story I've been working on, and I write a lot of tales, a lot of them. So one of these days I'll put these tales in one book because I really like writing them. They're not fairy tales, but they're somewhere, it's like Oscar Wilde fairy tales, only with a little Japanese thrown in. I don't know exactly how to explain them, but I do. I'm always writing. I mean, I can never really focus on one thing, which is very difficult. But it's just how I am. And but like the thing I was telling you, the um, rabbit hole, that was for a tale. So I'm always writing. I have a lot of unpublished poetry. I have a lot of stuff, but that maybe I should have been working on. But I found during the pandemic, which was having this book was really great for me. My attention span, my ability to concentrate was very low. And I think it was because I was all set to go on a world tour. I had my bags packed and I was 73, thinking that I wouldn't be able to do world tours probably in the next couple of years. So really trying to do a last world tour, and it got, completely wiped out for the next couple of years. And then now it's fragmented. But my whole being was primed to be extroverted, primed for that part of me, because I have one part of me that's very reclusive and really antisocial, and that person writes. The other one goes out in the road and is in a tour bus with 10 guys or whatever, and doing whatever I have to do, and going on one stage for 2,000 people, another stage, then at Hyde Park for 100,000 people, just tripping from one thing to another, and it's a whole other consciousness. So that's what I was ready for, and I was like a boxer. I was ready for that. I had like trained myself, my mind, my being, and then to be like that. I mean, my suitcase was packed and everything stopped. And I'm not complaining. I'm just simply saying that. And suddenly I was alone in my house in New York City, and I couldn't go anywhere because I have a bronchial condition. New York, the pandemic, it was bad there. I was like they had this, the danger group, it's like 70 and above with a bronchial condition. And I thought, all right, I got both things. So I had to be really prudent, extra prudent. And I was really just pacing around and so I was really lucky to have this project, really happy that that Random House took on this project, because I needed to have some kind of focus. I need to have some kind of goal. I really love the reader. I think about the reader. I don't think about the reader when I'm writing poetry. I don't think about the reader when I'm writing some kind of, something that'll probably never be published. I thought about the reader all the time. In M Train was written for the reader. It might have just as well said, "Dear Reader," and the same as "Ear the Monkey." And this is totally for the reader, or the person who holds. I don't even know if you could call this book a book to read, but it's a book, whoever holds it in their hand, I read it for them. It's not like tarot cards or anything, or the I Ching, but I also think like they could open a date and see what's the vibe of that day, or what. Oh, it's Dylan Thomas's birthday. Maybe I'll read one of his poems today. Or it's Frank Zappa's birthday. I'm going to put him on really loud.
I think there are a lot of different ways to experience a book of days, and I cannot wait for other people to get to do what I got to do. I mean, like I said at the top of the show, I got to learn that I loved opera, which I did not know until you sent me down a rabbit hole. I really quite like it, and I just had stayed away from it for years. Glenn Gould, I knew I liked, but I hadn't listened to in a really long time. And, Sam Shepard's words on the page, I am always, always happy to go down that
what
rabbit.
is interesting about the Glenn Gould thing? I was reading, I love 2666. I've read it a number of times, and or at least parts of it a number of times. And I was reading one section, and I can't even tell you what section it was. And I started thinking, the rhythm of this is like the Goldberg variations. I don't know if it was the part about the crimes or if it was a whole other section, whatever it was. I kept thinking that. So I befriended his literary executor. And so I said to him, Nazia, did Roberto ever listen to music while he was writing? And he went, oh, yes. And he tells me that when, if he was in a certain mood, he would put on his headphones and put Metallica on really loud. And he said, and if he was in a different mood, he didn't want words, he would put on Glenn Gould's The Goldberg Variations. And I heard it. I heard it in his words. That's why I put the two of them together in that picture.
I love it. I absolutely, absolutely love it. Have you picked the books you're taking on the road with you? Because you are going back on the road, and I know you. I love the way you pack. The way you pack is amazing.
Well, I usually take. It's very hard. First of all, it's painful to say goodbye to my books. I have in my room books that I had, as a child. Here is my number one pick. If someone said, well, someone has asked me what if you could only tell people to read one book, what would it be?
Okay.
There it is. Pinocchio.
Okay.
And this,
Okay.
look at this poor battered book. Let me see. There it is, The Adventures of Pinocchio. But yeah, I've had this book. It is completely tattered since I was like 6 years old. And I got it in a church bazaar for like a nickel. And here's a book I read when I was like 11. This was my mother's book. And Girl of the Limberlost. So I have these books that I've had since a child. So I have some here in Rockaway, most of them in New York. And I have to say goodbye to all my books. I mean, not just them, all my first editions. I have beautiful books that were gifts to me, and some I've had. I'm all through my life. I have such beautiful books, and but when I'm getting on the road, I choose one book, and sometimes two, because I pack so light.
Right.
And so every once in a while it'll be like something for study or just some book that I, want to reread, or I just picked up. Sometimes New Directions sends me, some new translations, or I just find a book and I'll save it for the road. But or I'll want to reread something. Like if I can't find anything at all, I'll take a book like this, which I've read many times, but like is A Journey to the East.
Yeah.
And I've read it many times, but it's slim, light to pack, and you can count on it for taking you somewhere. How I take a book, I take it at the last minute. And sometimes I've almost missed flights because of like the turmoil of trying to pick a book, and you're going somewhere like Budapest and you don't know if they'll have an English, a book that sells English books or some books in English. And but sometimes that's why I write, because I have nothing to read. I really write sometimes to entertain myself because I have nothing to read. And that's how I started writing my tales, so I could read them later.
I'm really looking forward to those tales. We can be patient. We can hang out. We can wait. You've got a tour to do.
You can send me your because you're really fun to talk to.
Well, thank you. I think we really have covered what I wanted to, because I do want new readers to focus on this book, because it is a different reading experience. And to me, it's art. It's art. It's 366 verses of an epic poem. It's a different Patti Smith experience. And I do want readers to come to it with sort of an open mind. I was not expecting a photo of you with Keanu Reeves. It's adorable, that photo.
Well, exactly. But that's what I want.
It's great.
What I want is like, I've always been like that, though. I don't like being stuck like into any certain thing or expectations, or people wanting me to just give hip answers. Like people say, what are you listening to? I'm listening to Arianna Grande. Why? I don't really know her songs, but that girl has such a range. So I'll listen to her to study her voice. I mean, that girl is an amazing singer. Or, everybody loves, like we're in New York City. There's Harry Styles has 15 concerts at Madison Square Garden sold out. I don't know anything about him. So I decided I'm gonna look this kid up. And I heard one song he did called Girl Crush. It was so touching and he's so appealing. I thought, oh, that's why people like him. He's appealing. And you know, Keanu Reeves is like the nicest person. And I love the John Wick movies.
So
I
do
love
I.
anime. I like dancing it by myself to pop music. It's just like I don't like being stuck in any box. I like to. I have all these manga books that I sometimes I take manga on the road. Just look at that. I'll look at the pictures or um, I just am fascinated by that. But I don't like being confined in other people's ideas of what they think I'm going to be like, because I don't know. I'm just myself. I have, you know, I'll do something even just to agitate, even to be annoying or something. But yeah, why did I put Keanu Reeves in the book, for instance? I'll tell you why. Because when I was writing Year of the Monkey, two of my closest friends died, and my friend Sandy Pearlman, who was really a genius. And Sandy Pearlman didn't have many heroes that were alive. He really loved, ancient literature and mythology and science and all kinds of things. But he loved Keanu Reeves. He loved him. He loved The Matrix. It was his hero. He loved him. I don't know why. It was so weird. It was like weird to me that I didn't know anything about Keanu Reeves. And right after Sandy died, I was at an art event and there was Keanu Reeves with his girlfriend. When I saw Keanu Reeves, I almost started crying. Not because of me. I don't never even seen a Keanu Reeves movie.
Right.
But I thought, if only Sandy could be here.
Right.
And so I just felt compelled, and I went up and told Keanu Reeves all about Sandy. I introduced myself in a small way, in a little encapsulated way about Sandy. And I said, maybe this seems strange because Sandy's departed, but I'm saying hello to you from Sandy. He completely got it.
Yeah.
He was so empathetic, so nice. And my guitar player took the picture. And next to it in the book, next to his picture, me and Keanu Reeves, that's Keanu Reeves' birthday. Next to it is a picture of the record. It's a tableau that I did here in Rockaway with the Medea record and a few other things. And if you look, there's a picture of Sandy. There's a little photograph of Sandy. So I put them so Sandy was next to Keanu Reeves in my book. And that was the whole tale. And plus the fact that Keanu Reeves is really nice and that I'm waiting for John Wick 4.
Same. Cannot wait for that movie. Sometimes you just need a different thing. I have all of the brain span in the world for beautiful books, but when it comes to movies, I kind of like things to blow up and bad things to happen, which is terrible.
Oh, I saw the Batman all by myself.
There you go. See, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
It was like the end of the pandemic, and I'm like in a mask sitting in a movie theater with 10 people in it, where it should have been like filled with people like screaming and just sitting there with popcorn watching the Batman, perfectly happy. And the same person who would sit all night watching Tarkovsky movies. One doesn't include the other. I have a definite aesthetic, but I'm not a snob, just like coffee. I love coffee, but Dunkin' Donuts coffee is fine with me.
One of the pieces I found when I was doing my research on you too is a bit of a profile written of you by Margot Jefferson, who shares your high-low aesthetic. Margot's not a snob. She's just not a snob. She just really wants to see the beautiful thing or hear the beautiful. And it just made me so happy to see. And this is from 1975. This is from a while ago. And it just delights me to no end that here's this profile and the two of you sitting down talking about, and it's a great piece. It's a really great piece. But more importantly, the idea of the two of you with this high-low, not a snob, just I want to experience everything. And again, this brings me back to Book of Days, because that's what this it's such an experience, and there's so many. You have a moment too early in the book where you're talking about one of your first books from childhood, and it's the 1,000 places to visit.
Yep,
And then the next page is, this is the first time I saw a palm tree.
yep, it was.
Yeah, that's wild though. I mean, and to have those 2 pages sitting there. And it's like, well, now, I mean, where haven't you been? You've been pretty much everywhere. I mean,
I've
Ayers
traveled
Rock
a lot.
shows
I
up.
haven't been in, I'm not allowed to go to China, so I haven't been to,
Oh, well, there's okay.
but I have been on
Sorry,
the
forgive me.
Chinese border in
Mhm.
Vietnam.
Right.
So I was right on the Chinese border, and I got to see rice paddies, which are
Yep.
beautiful. And I got to see a lot of Vietnam. And I guess where I haven't been to India.
Mhm.
I haven't been to Ethiopia, where I really wanted to go.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of it, a lot of places that I've really wanted to go, I haven't gone because a lot of it at a certain time in my life, because financially I couldn't afford to go,
Right.
because I travel alone. I only speak English. I'm more of a mental traveler. So I sort of like to drift in and out of places.
Yeah.
I'd love to go. I haven't been to Antarctica. I'd love to go there. And I haven't been to Greenland yet, and I want to go
Mhm.
there. Been to Iceland.
Mhm.
And I really want to go to India someday, and I know I will, but I have to go under the right circumstances, and I have to be very healthy.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
and because also long travel is really hard for me. I
Mhm.
mean, long flights, and
Mhm. Mhm.
I've loved traveling. I have seen a lot of the world. I've performed in a lot of the world. I've been to, so many wondrous places. And I feel really, really blessed because I was just a girl growing up in South Jersey in a time in the 50s where people didn't even go to New York City,
Yeah.
didn't have passports. They didn't think of going to Europe, let alone go to Vietnam or go to Cambodia or other places. And I had to break through that mold of being a lower middle class kid that without a whole lot of prospects who wanted to see the world. My father used to say, poetry will never get you anywhere. You're not going to go see the world through poetry. But in a way, it wasn't true because poetry uh, led me to rock and roll. And it was rock
Mhm.
and roll really that allowed me to see the world because I
Yeah.
got to tour everywhere.
Mhm.
Well, not everywhere, but quite a lot of places. But one of these days, I'll go to Harar and I'll go to India.
Mhm.
And if I don't, I'll read about them.
It seems like a good plan. And that's the beauty of books, though. And that's the beauty of Book of Days, because again, Dublin, Ayers Rock, Budapest, I think is, yeah, there's an
I
image
don't
from
know.
Budapest.
There's all
There's
kinds of
so
places.
much.
There's a lot of places, and there's so many. That's why I said, there's these places just have to. They're placeholders
Hmm.
for all the other places. I mean, I have so many, Puccini's piano is a
Hmm.
placeholder for, Verdi's hat I have a picture of. I have all the places I've been in Italy or all the pictures of St. Petersburg or all the pictures. They're all little stepping stones that people can they can take paths, other
Hmm.
places with them, use them as pick up the stone and keep going,
Yeah.
or just be entertained by the things that are there. I'd love for people to travel through the book. This little book, it's not just about traveling to cities or countries, it's traveling, to genres or to the mind or the people or, you know, to different worlds. The world, Alice Ball, this
Yeah.
young girl I discovered who, um, what a tale. I couldn't find hardly anything about this girl. She was on her way of discovering a cure to leprosy and had already developed a cream to um, help diminish leprosy and
Hmm.
allow people to go see their families and the pain and sadly she died in an accident, a chemical accident when she was 24, and a professor stole her all of her notes and things and went on to make the cure, her what she was
Mm.
doing, and took the credit. And for decades, she was like unknown. And so there's very little known about this girl, but she is finally getting her recognition. And I love having Alice Ball in the book. I was honored to have Alice Ball in the book, even though all I could find was the one photograph of her.
Mhm.
But I think about her all the time.
Mhm.
This girl, can you imagine being a young girl who nearly cures leprosy and then is almost forgotten? But the book remembers her.
And that's really important. I mean, that's why we have poetry. It's not just to remember people, but also to put them in front of new audiences,
That's so nice.
right?
Yeah. Are you
I
a
think
writer?
I'm a bookseller. I'm really happy to be a bookseller. I can write copy when it comes to books, and I can certainly
Well, I
find
can
this.
see you love books.
I can find the spine of a story in a conversation.
We would have had really a lot of fun if we were working in a bookstore together. We'd probably
Oh,
get in a lot of trouble.
we would. We would. Without a doubt. We would. I mean, this is the thing that I love more than anything in the world. And the fact that I get to be a bookseller every day just delights me to no end. And yeah, there are days where you're like, oh, okay, here we are. But really, more often than not, I get to walk around with a grin like this.
Well, I'm happy to
Pretty
see
great.
that grin.
Okay, Patty, it's clear that you and I can keep talking about a book of days and your 366 ways to say hello for a very long time, but I do have to let you get back to your real life. So thank you again for making the time. It was
Thank
so
you.
exciting to talk to you
It
and
was
your
so much
body of work.
fun. Really
Oh,
great. Thank you.
thank you.
And,
Thank you. Thank you.
hope we speak again sometime.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Hello, readers. It's time for another TBR Top Off, where we recommend books to pick up when you stop in for your copy of A Book of Days by Patti Smith. I'm Mark, coming to you from my Barnes & Noble store in Cincinnati, and I'm joined by Grace, a bookseller who is almost probably a bigger fan of Patti Smith than I am, so I couldn't not have you on this episode. I mean, we love Patti Smith. A new book by her is always a treat. Listening to her music while you're reading her books is probably the smartest way to go. I know you have a special place in your heart for Patti's music.
Yeah, I discovered Patti Smith while I was exercising, and I was like, this is the greatest thing to work out to, because it is raw, uncut, and you are ready to go.
Yep. Love it, love it, love it. Well, we've got a couple of great books to talk about today. Grace, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in if you're cool with that. Yay. The book that I chose is about a band that is very special to me. The book is This Searing Light, the Sun, and Everything Else by John Savage. This is an incredible oral history of one of the most profound bands in history, Joy Division. Joy Division was a thing of beauty that sprang from a ravaged Manchester in the late 70s. They helped redefine punk music and were primed to be a worldwide phenomenon. Sadly, after just 2 albums and right before their first US tour, frontman Ian Curtis committed suicide, and the tragedy ended their momentum, but their legacy and their influence on music and culture is felt to this day. There have been so many write-ups about Joy Division, biographies and interviews and what have you, but this book, I think, rises at least close to the top, if not the top for me. It is done specifically with interviews with band members and supporters. So you get a feel for the rise and fall of this band from firsthand accounts. And it's told beautifully, it's handled beautifully, and it's just a fantastic book. If you're a music lover of any genre, you should definitely check out This Searing Light, The Sun, and Everything Else by John Savage. Grace, what do you have for us?
Only the best. Only the best, folks. So
Okay.
I have to show, because for the love, Joni Mitchell's Morning Glory on the Vine, of course. So it is the book that was written in 1971, but was not released until 2019. She compiled it together because she couldn't quite figure out what to give her friends for Christmas that year. And she's like, what else could I give them? Let's do a compilation of my art and handwritten lyrics. So it's got portraits of famous artists that she was affiliated with, like anybody from Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Young, of course. she, of course, did the artwork for so far, so they had to be featured. There's Judy Collins. She's just one of the most incredible, prolific songwriters, singers, and artists of our generation and previous generations. And of course, it is coming out right around the time where she announces she's doing a duo show with Brandi Carlile in Washington. Here's hoping we get to go. Joni Mitchell is near and dear to my heart. I remember on her birthday, I picked up Blue about 2 years ago on vinyl, and it changed my life. So,
oh, fantastic picks. Well, that is all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Poured Over. Please make sure to give us a rating and subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also follow us at Barnes & Noble. Pretty simple. You can follow our home store at BN Westchester. I'm Mark.
I'm Grace.
And happy reading and happy listening too, because there's a lot of music for you to chew on right now. So you're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.